something that I've been doing recently. It's a little experimentation process. I used to do this journaling practice at night that was what today went well and what could possibly go well tomorrow. Really simple. And recently I changed it to what about today was magical and what could possibly be magical tomorrow. And
Oh, nice.
for me
Yeah.
that changed the like, oh, what was good today to something that felt more of in the emotion of awe, and just has been a cool practice to see how that makes me feel, and keeping that consistent and continuously creating that awe and magic on a daily basis.
That's so important, and that's why we count joy points in EBT, and there's 6 different ways to create it.
Hello, thank you for tuning into the Natural Health Rising podcast. My name is Rachel Smith. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and I've helped hundreds of people naturally reverse symptoms of autoimmune diseases and other health challenges, from digestive issues to hormone imbalances. And in these weekly episodes, you're going to learn from myself and top health experts from around the world about functional medicine and holistic health tips to help you rise to your healthiest, happiest self. On today's episode, I have Dr. Mellin, who is a health psychologist, New York Times bestselling author, and founder of Emotional Brain Training, a program for rewiring stress into joy for a life of optimal health and higher purpose. She developed EBT as a professor of medicine at the University of California, San Francisco, and directs EBT to train health professionals and coaches in this method. Welcome to the show. How are you, Dr. Mellin?
I'm very well, thank you. I have a lot of joy today. How about you?
Same, I'm having a great day.
I'm glad.
um, I'm so curious what inspired you to get into health psychology in the first place.
Well, I actually started in nutrition because I had a problem with overeating, weight gain, hating my body, and I wanted to help other people and I wanted to help myself. And so I ended up finding out at the university when I was doing some research that the root cause of overeating and weight gain is actually in the emotional brain, in what's called the amygdala, which is the center that essentially collects all these different circuits that control our life and our health, and that there was a way to begin to take that amygdala, instead of having it control us and make us depressed or make us anxious or make us gain weight or have other problems or be prone to them. You could actually switch off the circuits that were damaging. They're called allostatic circuits, and those chemicals, and activate healing chemicals. All you had to do is use your emotions in a different way. So I started researching this almost 40 years ago, and we found that it worked, but we didn't know why, because the neuroscience hadn't been developed. In fact, it took until 2010 to really figure out why emotional brain training, EBT, was having such an effect on people. And then we just moved with more science and more apps and being in groups. We found out you had to be in a group with other people so the emotional brain would light up, so you just do it over the telephone. And what happened is I obviously lost my problem with eating and weight because I rewired the circuits in the brain that were causing it. And I just wanted everyone to have it. So I've stayed with it for all these years.
Hmm. Tell me more about some of the principles of EBT, and what's actually happening in a session. What does that really look like?
Oh, well, the session itself is a small group because you need to be like a family. The emotional brain is the primitive brain. And what humans like, because of their emotional brain, is to be with other people. So if you're in a closet and you're trying to process your emotions alone, you can do that
Mm.
with our app. But it doesn't go to the very bottom of the brain, the part where when the amygdala is activated with a circuit that is making us hungry for no reason, is making us depressed or anxious. So we have telephone groups with an EBT coach or provider and several people, and it's a working group. It's not about going to a therapist. These are actually the same circuits that therapists go after, except we do it scientifically. We do it in an organized way where you come in and you learn how to spot a circuit you don't like, and it's very easy. It just, anything that makes you not in your joy is a circuit. And you're not going to
Mm.
go after all the circuits, but let's say you have an overreaction to your boss, or let's say you don't like the fact that you want to nibble on food at night, or any other pattern that you have in relationships or in your inner life of mood or in habits. They're all just circuits. So once you learn how to rewire one, um, you like it. When people have their first rewiring, it usually happens within 2 to 3 weeks of the time they get into a group, because everybody else is rewiring too. So you sort of learn from each other. It's like you don't have a guru or a therapist um, looking at you or supporting you. I mean, the EBT providers, a lot of them are therapists or coaches, but what they're doing is empowering you to change the process of how you deal with your emotions in such a way to make the new way that you process emotions switch off the circuit in the moment so you get immediate relief, whether it's eating or a bad mood. Like I was in a bad mood last night. My husband said something, and you know how you get triggered? I was
Mm-hmm.
kind of triggered. So I essentially used the tools and I stopped being triggered, which really helped not have a big fight, you know? And the same thing with eating. And then once you figure out that you can actually process your emotions with the app and with someone listening, maybe a few times a day, someone will listen to you for 2 or 3 minutes or something like that. Or if you're in the group, someone will do the work and someone else will listen. And what happens is you say, well, that's really good, but I don't even want to have that circuit in my brain. I don't want it in my amygdala. I don't want it like I'm always trying to be sure that I'm good. I'm going to spot that circuit and I'm going to use the same techniques, the same exact techniques with more intensity until it's erased. And when it's erased, it's very different. I mean, it's particularly exciting with food, being that I had that problem with food where I was eating, I was making meringue cookies on Friday night and eating them all and, all that stuff. And then eating over the weekend and then, hating myself on Monday morning and then
Mm-hmm.
I did all that. And what happens when you erase a circuit, and this is extremely important because when I say this, you probably say, what is she talking about? Until you rewire your first circuit. Because when you rewire a circuit, you actually erase the circuit that causes the biochemical drives and instructions in your brain to repeat the same pattern over and over again. Once these circuits are there, we do it over and over again. So when you get it to the point that you have erased it, it might take a couple of weeks. What happens is it's like the love affair is over. You know, if you had a love affair with food, you just look at it and you say, wow, it's not that good. I don't think I need it anymore because you're not being biochemically driven to repeat the pattern. And what happens is, what I love most about it is that we blame ourselves. There's so much self-judgment and there's so much confusion. Why do I have these problems and these issues? And why do I keep doing the same thing over and over again? The major underlying idea of EBT is it's not you, it's a circuit in your amygdala, in your emotional brain, and stop blaming yourself and roll up your sleeves, get into an EBT group and start joining with others and start rewiring them, because when you have freedom from that wire, you can finally relax, you know?
Mm. Yeah, I really love how it takes the blame off of the self. Like you just are the way you are, and taking away that self-judgment and shame and things like that. That's beautiful. And you talked a little bit about how it's different than psychotherapy. I feel like traditional talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy is really just rehashing things again and again, and maybe a therapist trying to give some advice or asking you a lot of questions, but it feels like you're kind of going in circles versus really healing something or changing, like you're saying, a circuit in the brain. Do you have anything else to speak about, like traditional talk therapy or psychotherapy?
No, I'm really sad to say that traditional psychotherapy, even though it's wonderful to have someone to talk to, someone that's trusted, someone you could go to and feel safe, and some of the techniques can be very helpful. But it wasn't until at the University of California, San Francisco, we got lucky and we were persistent for a few decades. And we realized that you could actually organize the brain of psychology and survival, which is the emotional brain, into 5 different levels of stress with 5 different tools. And you either, when you use the tools a little bit, you switch off the circuit. When you use it with more intensity, like I'm really going to get that circuit, boom, it's gone. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's organized neuroscientific psychotherapy that does not require a therapist. And the
Mm.
reason it doesn't require a therapist is to develop a program with essentially video. So you essentially learn it, and then you learn it better, and then you learn it really better, because you have to learn this over time. But what it means is that right now, typical psychotherapy is not based on neurophysiology
Yeah.
of the brain. They're not based on neurophysiology, which is there's 5 different stress levels of the brain, and there's 5 different levels of memory. So there's memories from when you're happy, that's at the top of your brain. And the top of the brain's in charge. And then when you're not so happy, they're still homeostatic or healthy. Then you're feeling kind of good. It's more toward the middle right here in your forehead. And then go down to your cheekbone. Right there, you're in the limbic brain, and you are starting to be wobbly and anxious and feel insecure. Go down to number 4, where you feel stuck and depressed and bad. And 5, the reptilian brain, and you're stressed out. So everybody has that file drawer in their brain. And what happens is when you happen to be in stress, what happens is the circuits in the bottom of your brain, the ones that are really unhealthy, that are causing you to repeat those same patterns over and again, they come alive. And essentially the synaptic connections between the neurons are fluid. And all you have to do is stay present to your emotions and change the message. Okay, that's emotional brain training. And so you have a skill called the cycle tool with the app, and you go down, you unlock that circuit in about 30 seconds. You bring up whatever that unconscious message is, you stay present to it, you change it, and you weaken the circuit. Okay. When you are using cognitive behavior, the reason it doesn't work in the long term, or it only works for one narrow thing, and if you change one narrow thing, but don't change the physiology or the stress that is caused by that circuit, you'll just develop another problem. You'll just go from one problem to the next. But using that same image of those chests of drawers and the file drawers in your brain of 5 different levels, and you want to get out of the bottom and transmit those so that you can move to the top of the brain, so that you're moving from feeling bad to feeling good, feeling stressed to feeling joy. Cognitive therapy only goes to the top drawers. Because you stay, you try to be good, you try to think smart, and it's not until you dip down, unlock the circuit at the bottom of the brain, that you change the circuits that matter. And that's why in the long term, people that do EBT, they're free. They've cleared out the clutter in their brain. And the people that are CBT are still working at it. They're trying hard. And the reason that makes me sad is not only does that mean that the chronic stress is still there, which causes these health problems, but also because, what do we really need in life? We need to be in joy. We're going to need purpose. We're going to use our creative skills. We're going to make the world a better place. If I'm on edge, always trying not to overeat, or trying to develop positive thoughts and all that, because I haven't cleared out the clutter in the bottom of my brain, I can't make my dreams come true. I'm too busy trying to just cope.
Yeah. Something that I know this is very different from, but reminding me of something that helped me a lot in my journey, because I've tried the CBT in the past and didn't work for me, and that's okay. I started doing a lot of different therapies, and one that I came across that was super helpful for me was EMDR therapy. And that felt like it really rewired things within a session, which was so profound. And I have a lot of friends that also love EMDR therapy. I'm curious what your opinion is on the difference between this compared to EMDR, and if maybe there's actually specific situations that the EBT would work better on than EMDR, or vice versa.
There's a couple things there. It's a great question. First of all, if you look at what the problem is, the circuits that are encoded in the bottom of their brain, EMDR is going for the 5 circuits, the circuits that are from trauma. EBT goes for the 5 circuits as well. So there's a crossover there. Both of them work on the 5 circuits. The difference is, and certainly they're compatible, some people use both of them. The difference is this: in order to have a real solution, and this method initially was called the solution before we realized it was rewiring the emotional brain, and that's why we changed the name of it. But if you want to have a solution, you look at the root cause and you solve the root cause. The root cause of the circuits that EMDR and other methods are also going after is essentially dysregulation. In other words, a failure to be able to cope with the level of stress that everyone's under today. I mean, everyone is so stressed. So the first thing about EBT is you learn to be able to get out of any level of stress quickly and change the circuit that's causing it. Because there's 5 levels of stress in the brain and 5 essentially skills. What happens if you don't go to EBT is you can cope well at brain state 1, where you feel great, or 2, maybe at 3 if you really do a lot of mindfulness and you really push it, but you'll be flat out at 4 or 5 where it really counts. So the first thing about EBT is it goes to the root cause of the problem, which is failure of self-regulation, because it is so stressful now, you can't think your way out of this stress. You've got to use the emotional pathways in the emotional brain, and then it happens in 1 or 2 minutes. I mean, everyone should have this. Secondly, you go to a therapist for EMDR and you might say, I have this circuit and that circuit. Maybe I've got 2 circuits. Maybe I have a really, really traumatic memory, or maybe I have a strong addictive drive or something like that. Well, that's not how the world works. It's not black-white. It's all in shades of gray. So once you learn the basic self-regulation tools of EBT, you are primed to go to the next step, which is to learn how to rewire these trauma circuits. And you learn how to rewire them. And everyone has at least 4. So if you don't do the whole job, if you just go after the pathology and don't say, what's the real cause? Spiral, you need to learn how to spiral up. You need to learn as an everyday skill, how to rewire a circuit. So you have that competency, and then you need to rewire it until your brain has a new set point in joy instead of stress, in essentially homeostasis instead of allostasis. So all those 3 things, self-regulation, rewiring, and raising your set point, is what is necessary for optimal health. Anything short of that will not do the trick. And that's what we do in EBT.
Okay, so we have EMDR, which traditionally is more focused on like a deep trauma, very specific memories, can help kind of reset that response when you're thinking about that memory, or if you have a similar situation maybe come up in your life. And then we have the EBT, where it's more of like full on teaching you how to cope with emotions, regulate, get out of stress quickly, and access elevated emotions on a consistent basis.
Okay, so that's the first thing,
Yes.
self-regulate. That's 10% of EBT.
Okay.
90% is just what EMDR does. It goes right after the trauma circuits.
Okay.
Learn the process of going after them, and you learn how to rewire the drive. You learn how to clear out the fear memories, and you do it with the same system, because all of the EBT tools are based on optimal resilience. And when you think about EMDR, if the symptom stops, it's because the wire has been rewired. So we're going after those same wires, but those wires are often really attached. So let's say somebody has a problem with overeating. I'll just give you the overeating example. For me, I was 11 years old. I came home from school. I'd been bullied. And what I didn't know is I was in fight or flight. And in that state, I have a fight or flight circuit going. Okay. And I didn't know how to cope. So what I did is I reached for some cinnamon rolls on the table. There were cinnamon rolls. I ate 3 of them. Okay. And I really felt ashamed, because my mother was in the back bedroom. I could have talked to her, but I didn't know how to talk to her. And so and also my father was diabetic. So I knew you weren't supposed to eat 3 cinnamon rolls, and I ate them anyway. What I didn't know, because the neuroscience hadn't been developed then, is that I created what's called a survival circuit. Okay, so the survival circuit, if you're in a state of stress, and whatever you do, whatever sensory awareness, whatever behavior gets locked into this fight or flight circuit, and then it forms a new circuit. And if you don't process your emotions before you go to bed that night, by the next morning, you will have a survival drive to repeat that same behavior that you're out of control with. Because when it's activated, the thinking brain goes offline and you repeat it. And so essentially you find those survival circuits, and some of them are really clean. There's a woman last week in one of my groups, one of the telegroups, and she rewired her food circuit for sugar in 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks she was in EBT. Now, that's not everybody does that, but she went to a big party she's an Italian family. She went to a big party. They had cookies and candy. She says, this is very bizarre, but I must have rewired the circuit because I had no desire. Either circuits create biochemical drives. Somebody else in her same group, when that circuit was encoded, had a lot of trauma, had the parents who were at a fight, that there was a lot of violence going on, and you don't give up the behavior until you've not only rewired the circuit, but all of the emotional clutter around it. So there might be some fear memories. The same tools apply. It's a matter of doing it. And that's one of the reasons we do it in groups, because it's fun to do it with other people. It's shame-free, and you see people changing, and you also inspire other people. So whether it takes 2 weeks or a month to rewire a circuit with all the benefits in there, all the benefits of rewiring those fear memories, everybody uses the same process, and everybody has a big party, and we celebrate every time someone rewires a circuit, which is almost every week in a small group.
It's amazing. So you were telling a story in the beginning briefly. You said the other day your husband, I think you said your husband triggered you, and you said I used a tool and very quickly was able to get out of that. Is this, when you mention this tool, is it a tool that you can share with us on the podcast that someone could take home with them? Or was this, you get out the app you're talking about and you got to go through some sort of video?
Well, it's not a video, it's actually just prompts. It's like
Okay.
23 steps on the resiliency pathway to go from, when I was triggered by my husband, Walt, and just not to give you too many details, but he was also triggered. So when
Okay.
you get two people triggered, it's not a pretty picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I didn't want to express what was on my mind at that moment, because I was in brain state 5. I was biochemically, I took one look at him and I knew he was too. So I went in the other room and I switched off the circuit. The way you do that is, it's called the cycle tool. It's called spiraling up. There are 23 separate lead-ins. Like, you first say the situation is, and you complain for about 2 or 3 sentences. And then you say, what I'm most stressed about is, and then you say whatever comes to your mind. So you say these lead-ins with the top of your brain. EBT app is very simple. It's just 23 steps. And it essentially activates the circuit, unlocks the synaptic connections, and you process. This is interesting. It almost goes against everything your mother told you. Your mother probably told you, you shouldn't be angry. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it turns out if you don't have a robust, just a little burst of anger tool, you are going to be depressed, you are
Mm-hmm.
going to be anxious, or you're going to be ashamed or numb. Because the unique value of EBT anger is it's very safe, it's very quick, but it does 2 things. It actually ignites the circuit that's most problematic at the bottom of your brain. And then it quickly dispels the stress chemicals. So you're back to about a 1 or a 2 in about 30 seconds or so.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is, after that, you express, I feel sad that, just one, you don't have to go on and on, just one sadness. And it's tender, sweet, loving sadness. If you hadn't expressed the anger, you'd be depressed. And then
Mm-hmm.
one fear, which is kind of, I'm afraid of that, and not I'm panicked or I'm anxious. And then one part where you feel you have your power to change. Once you do that, whatever the original emotion was, whether it was depression or panic or shame or hostility, boom, it's gone, and it moves right to the positive emotions, and you move right up to joy, because that's how the brain works. I don't believe there's a stress response, and I'm a
Mm-hmm.
health psychologist, and I've been on the faculty at UCSF for 40 years before I retired. The idea is, I'm saying it because there's evidence for that. Because if you process your emotions with these emotional brain training tools, what happens is, reliably, under the stress, even the agony, even those times when you think you're not going to make it through, there is joy. There are the elevated emotions of love, compassion, gratitude, hope, forgiveness, awe, and joy. And that's what that does. Those positive emotions just crop up. Remember, there's 23 steps in this pathway. They're just on the app. You just go through them. You read the thing, you say something. You read the thing, you say something. Whatever comes up from your body. But what's fascinating is, this is the brain that's based on evolutionary biology. Under our pain is immense joy, because we need to be in that state of optimal biochemistry, optimal state of being, so that we can take care of our children. So we care about the future. So we take care of the elderly. We need that in order to give back to others. And the stress chemicals don't really shut off until we're in joy. So we
Mm-hmm.
see that joy as medicine.
If you have an autoimmune disease, you have a loved one with autoimmunity, or you're struggling with just some random symptoms that you can't figure out what to do about. Maybe it's brain fog, chronic fatigue, digestive issues, joint pain, etc. Then I have something that could be life-changing for you. I created a webinar just for you, whether you want to get off of medications and know that there has to be a better way to live your life, or you're still searching for answers and you want to know what is triggering your health issues and how to fix them holistically. This webinar dives into the top 4 mistakes that you are most likely making that are keeping you stuck and unwell. And of course, I give you what you should be doing instead. I share everything from the right lab testing to do to nutrition and lifestyle changes that you can start making right away so that you can start healing and start feeling vibrant and healthy once again. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes to sign up or head to naturalhealthrising.net/webinar and you will be on your way to totally changing your life. Oh, 100%. Something that you were talking about, speaking things aloud. And so I want to highlight that for a second, because my understanding, my limited understanding that I'll let you explain a little bit more, is that if we mull over, maybe you could try to go over these things internally in your head, but if you're just repeating the fear and the emotions and things cycling in your head, once you start to verbalize them, this starts to, even just the verbalization, does that start to shift to a different part of the brain? That's what's happening, right?
What we know is it's the experience of spiraling up. In other words, going from stress to joy, which is the basis for all health, because we change our biochemistry, is an emotional experience. And that's why when we train providers, we train health psychologists, we train therapists, we train doctors, we train coaches in this, they're kind of aghast because they say, you mean I have to teach my patients how to be angry and sad and afraid and do this in a specific procedure? There's no creativity needed because it's how the brain works. And I say, yes, because you have to get emotional and show them that you can say, I feel angry that. You don't have to say, I feel angry that. The point is that the brain changes most rapidly with emotions. If you're alone, let's say you have a spiritual connection and you are using EBT, the same process alone, and you are just in a riveting state where you have goose pimples all over your body because of that spiritual connection, your brain's going to shift. If you do it, so sometimes you can be alone and do it and it works as well. Other times when you sit there and someone just listens to you, and all the EBT support groups, there's rules. You never give advice, you never interrupt, you just listen, and afterwards you never comment. You just say some emotions that you experience inside. So it's very, very intimate. And so what happens is when someone's really listening to you and you know they're not going to bring it up to you later, you don't even know the people in these groups, you don't know their name, it's completely private and confidential. You can really let loose and say it, and just to be heard, just to be seen. So, and then in a group, the same thing, there's this collective resonance, because even though we see ourselves as very different, and we're very different in our thinking brain, we're remarkably the same in our emotional brain. So like my husband, when I met him 12 years ago, he had gone through a divorce. I had gone through a divorce. And so we meet up and I said, well, you got to understand, if you're dating me, I do EBT 24/7. So you might want to get into an EBT support group. So he goes in, he gets into the group and he says, there's all these different people there. I don't know if I have anything in common with them. Well, it took him about 2 weeks. And he was with this one woman because they connect with each other for 5 minutes here and there between sessions. And he says, this woman has nothing in common with me. We won't have the same friends. We don't have the same interests. We don't have the whatever. We get on the phone and one of us spirals up using this method and we have the same circuits. So the same circuits, like I am not worthy, or I get my safety from food, or I get my survival from hiding, or I get my existence from being perfect. These are all that come out of childhood stress and later trauma, and the brain just defaults to the same old patterns. So what happens is there's a sense of goodness of life, that I'm not in this alone. We all have these circuits and we're all helping each other.
Yeah, we are all so much more similar than we think. I actually went to this women's business conference probably like a month and a half ago, and they did this really interesting exercise and there was, I don't know, 1,000 women in the room, and they handed out these cards, and the card had a list of all the things that they had you check off. Which one of these did you experience in the past year? And it was things like, I have felt unworthy, I have had imposter syndrome, I experienced loss of a loved one, I experienced financial hardship. So all of the things, all the worst things. And we sat there in private, checked them off, didn't put our names on them, and then we folded them up and we passed them around the room as wildly as we could so that nobody knew which cards were whose. And the speaker went through each one line by line and said, I want you to stand up now with the card that you have and represent that person that you don't know who they are in each of those experiences, or what that person went through. I would say like 80% of the room stood up with every single line. And so it was just this big eye-opening experience, like, wow, we really are so similar in these woundings, these patterns, these things that we experience in our lives.
Well, that's why I think there's a new age for psychotherapy. I think that psychotherapy right now is wonderful. If you're going to a psychologist or a psychotherapist, go ahead and go. But it's really out of date with the times, because
Mm-hmm.
essentially it's all about resilience. We know how to use that resiliency pathway, and we really just need to be listened to. And we need to be listened to so that we can find the circuit in our own brain. In other words, let me just mention this. Let's say that you had all those people there. What happened in that situation is they all came down to the same, what we call a core circuit, a core belief, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what was important is that they find the one that is bothering them. We're not going to rewire everyone's childhood and everything. Some things we do, something you just do the ones that are bothering you. If you're not enjoying and something's getting in the way of your health, rewire it. Otherwise, let it go. So what people learn in EBT is to listen to the therapist inside their own brain. That's biological, not psychological. And interestingly enough, when we train health professionals to guide these groups and this coaching, it's remarkably simple, because you're teaching the patient not what a therapist has to learn about, which is all the different insights, all the different pathologies, because we just go for the same health. We go, what you do is you complain about something that bothers you, that targets the circuit. You run through those feelings, you unlock the circuit, and this is what's important. You listen to yourself. You don't listen to a guru. You don't listen to anyone else. You listen to your own body. And what happens in that moment is the exact words that were recorded erroneously in your brain by some stressful experience, they float up to your thinking brain, and you need those exact words. And then you play with them until they're really precise. It might be, I feel, I am not worthy, and I never was. Or I get my safety from eating sugar to the point that I'm stuffed. It doesn't matter what the words are. It matters that the words in your thinking brain match the words in your emotional brain. And that's where you get the power to rewire it. And you know what? You don't need anyone to tell you that. All you need is to know how to listen to your body, because the moment that those match, the thinking brain and the emotional brain match, you get this huge relaxation response. Oh, absolutely. That's what it is. So your body is really wise. And EBT teaches you how to use your natural body healing process by yourself, with others, and also for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other advice for someone who's struggling with emotional eating or weight loss specifically?
I have lots. In fact, of all the research on EBT, and there are many studies on our website, you'll see that EBT is the only method that has been shown to produce lasting weight loss after treatment ends. And the reason is because it shuts off the stress circuits in the brain. The stress circuits in the brain activate 8 major chemicals that make us overeat, feel lethargic, and get fat.
Mm.
Those chemicals that are stress related are cortisol, dopamine, insulin, ghrelin, PYY, GLP-1,
Mm-hmm.
serotonin, and leptin. Okay, those 8 chemicals, when you're stressed, because of our hunter-gatherer ancestors, when they were stressed, there wasn't food around. And so whenever they were stressed, they needed to eat so they'd survive. So all of us have a genetic tendency for weight because we have stress. And when we have stress, we have those 8 chemicals. And when you rewire your brain with EBT, those chemicals normalize. When they normalize and the circuit's gone, you have lasting weight loss. If you take a shot, if you take an injection, that's one of the 8 chemicals. And that's why there's side effects, because it's not natural. We need all of those chemicals to switch. And so essentially, what you do with EBT is you change your biochemistry. One more thing that's really important. When people come into EBT, and more than half of the people in EBT go right for weight loss because they're desperate, they're tired of regaining the weight, and they know that this can work for them. But what happens is they come in and they rewire their food circuit. So that drive to overeat, like I was telling you about that woman who was Italian, it stops. But you're not done. There are 4 circuits in the brain that collaborate to make us overeat. You also rewire a mood you get stuck in. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression, maybe it's shame, whatever that is. You rewire it so you don't get a triggered response to go there and get stuck. Also rewire a love circuit, because our relationships can be so beautiful and they give us this wonderful oxytocin, so that which is an appetite suppressant. And also relationships are the greatest source of grief. And in stress, we all either distance too much or get overly close and want to rescue and please. There's a circuit in everyone's brain for that, so we shut that off. But the 4th one is the most important, and this is really important to know. By the time people rewire their food circuit, maybe it takes 2 weeks, whatever, 3 weeks, whatever it takes, their mood circuit, their love circuit, then they hit the body circuit. The body circuit is the most important, and this is the missing link in weight loss. The body circuit is a circuit where we either have learned to judge our body, which is a huge stressor, or with people, particularly those who've been through trauma and abuse, there will be a circuit to hold on to extra weight for protection. What either one of these, and some people have both body circuits, means that you're fighting yourself. If your emotional brain tells you you need to weigh more, no matter how hard you try, you're going to weigh more. And so what happens with this body circuit is when you've rewired all 4 of those circuits, something comes in that you won't believe until you experience it. It's called the joy of weight loss. You have changed biochemically enough so that all of a sudden you like being hungry. It's like a light taste, you like being hungry, because your biochemistry has changed so much that you're getting the endorphins and the dopamine and the oxytocin naturally from your brain, rather than trying to go to food to feel good. You're feeling good natural. And you're also saying, I never judge myself for my weight, but this is extra. I don't need it anymore. I don't need this weight. And I would never judge myself. But again, the joy of weight loss clicks in. And when that happens, you lose weight out of self-love. And what happens is it's pretty effortless. I had a woman the other day in a group of mine, and we do telegroups, so we don't see each other. And she said to me, she'd been in my group for I think about a year. And I never asked her about her weight. I know she had a food circuit, she had a body circuit, but she had continued with the program. And she brought it up in the group the other day. She says, well, I've lost 50 pounds on EBT. See, we never monitor the weight. If the circuits are still there, you're going to be heavier. You're going to eat more. When the circuits go away, you find that you're releasing weight and it feels very natural and it's lasting.
Yeah, that's amazing that they regulate the different chemicals in the body. So I'm assuming it's lowering cortisol, right? Because if you have high cortisol, high stress, your tendency to overeat is more likely. Maybe elevating dopamine when we have really low dopamine. Going and eating a donut is gonna spike our dopamine for a short minute, and then it's gonna crash our dopamine after that. Regulating our serotonin, you said leptin, ghrelin, all of that. Do you guys have any studies that show, do you actually track those biomarkers in people with the EBT?
We have not tracked the biomarkers. We just wait for the natural weight loss. We ask people not to try to lose weight, because then you don't know if the circuit's been rewired. So both for the food and for that. But an interesting part about dopamine is that what happens with EBT is there's a huge emphasis on love and all of the emotions that are called elevated healing emotions. Because every time when you spiral up, you're going to feel those emotions, which are love, compassion, gratitude, hope, forgiveness, awe, and joy, and rewards of purpose, like doing something to have peace inside, or authenticity or vibrancy or integrity. And that's built into every time you spiral up, you come back to a state of connection where you have those, the dopamine and the endorphins coming at a good level, at the moderate level, the natural level. When you reach for the sugar, let's say the donut, what happens is you get an abnormal external dopamine high. With EBT, you get a dopamine high that's sustainable and natural. But once you cross that boundary into artificial pleasures, I mean, I have a cookie if I want a cookie, I don't care. But the issue is we're talking about when you get stuck in that, so that that's your lifestyle, as you go from one sugary, fatty thing to the next, and alcohol and other things like it, what happens is you get something happening in your pain pleasure pathway. What happens is you go way high with the pleasure and it naturally bounces down to going way low. And then you don't have the self-regulatory skills to get out of the low. What are you going to do? You're going to go for another artificial high. And that's how we get addicted. And that's how we lose our freedom.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that someone also incorporating some sort of regular gratitude or awe practice on a daily basis would be supportive of maintaining the benefits?
Well, that's built into EBT. I would love to.
Okay.
You wake up in the morning. Let's say that you decide you're going to join an EBT support group, and you get your app, and you're in there with the folks, and you're doing it. You're learning how to rewire your amygdala. And so the first thing you'll hear from me is one thing: wake up in the morning and say, "What am I doing with my day today? I am creating joy in my life."
Mm-hmm.
Joy is one of those elevated emotions. You could say love, or you could say forgiveness or hope, but it has to be an elevated emotion. Awe is one of them. And so that's your target. The brain is happy to do it. It's just we're around all these folks that are stressed out and everyone's in the habit. It's a norm to be a little bit miserable. And we're changing that norm because your brain will do it. You just have to train your brain to do it. And so whenever you go through your morning, let's say you get to breakfast and the children are upset, or your spouse is grumpy and whatever, and you say to yourself, hey, I'm not in joy right now. And you go to your app. Now, you're not going to do it all the time, but you're going to do it often enough, because it only takes 1 minute for a really quick one, that you get back to your joy. So your brain is learning to go to joy. And every time it goes to joy, it switches off the trauma circuits. So the trauma circuits get weaker and the joy circuits get stronger. And that's how the set point of the brain goes up. So the brain gets in the habit of being in that connected joy flow state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, years ago, my early 20s, when I was really, really sick, struggling with autoimmune issues, and was really in the thick of it, as I was trying to heal, I started gratitude journaling. And it was such a simple practice. It took a lot of effort in the beginning because back then my mind was, I hate my life, my body hurts, why me, why this, why that, right? And just really focused on all of those negative things. And I dedicated myself to a lot of practices, meditation and other things as well. But having the gratitude journaling for me was huge. And not just listing out, oh, I'm grateful for my mom and food and the house. It was like, I'm grateful for my best friend because she listens to me and makes me feel heard, and really going through the why behind that and taking a moment to breathe that in and allow the gratitude to feel the gratitude in my body. And that was a practice that really changed my life. And something that I've been doing recently, it's a little experimentation process. I used to do this journaling practice at night that was, what today went well and what could possibly go well tomorrow. Really simple. And recently I changed it to, what about today was magical and what could possibly be magical tomorrow. And for me,
Nice.
that changed the oh, what was good today, to something that felt more of in the emotion of awe. And just has been a cool practice to see how that makes me feel, and keeping that consistent and continuously creating that awe and magic on a daily basis.
That's so important, and that's why we count joy points in EBT, and there's 6 different ways to create it. But I want to mention something because, if you have a comfortable life,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not being abused, if you're not going to 3 different jobs, if you don't have, like my husband had an accident with the dog, fell down a whole bunch of stairs out where we were exercising, and he broke his back, he broke his shoulder, and he broke his hip. Okay, he had so many injuries that he was in hospital bed for 8 months. We've just gone through that.
Wow.
So for all of us, the reason I love what you're saying, and it is scientifically based, because when you're in the elevated states of one, you're going to get that flow. Problem is, that's just not the way life is going to go. You know, we're going to lose our mother. We're going to have these things. And so one of the things I love about EBT is everyone who goes through it is stress protected. So for example, when you can get to that state of one, that takes a lot of self-regulatory strength, and your circumstances are pretty good. But I'm old enough, I'm 75. I'm old enough to know that I've never known one person that didn't have some really hard times. And the hard times in my life were the times where I used EBT the most. So I
Mhm.
could stay connected to my spiritual core, so I could stay deeply connected to myself when it was really, really, really hard. And those hard moments are when you define yourself. That's where you get self-respect, not when things are going well. So for example, with EBT, if you're really stressed, you can't bring up gratitude because the brain won't let you, because you have the stress chemicals going. And so with EBT, you have the security that you're always in one of 5 brain states. And even if you're in 5, you know that's actually a moment of opportunity because those circuits are being unlocked. And if you just stay present, you know, you say a prayer, or you listen to your feelings, you're actually helping your set point go up. And I'm going to give you one more idea that I think will help you. And that is, I mentioned to you that this EBT is about dismantling any of the allostatic emotions, any of the stressed emotions, whether it's suppressed. To see how simple it is, the same formula applies no matter what the negative feeling is or the stuck
Mhm.
state. And the magic formula, and I discovered this some 25 years ago. I've used it with the children's program, with the adolescents program, with every single program for addiction and mental health problems and prevention, is there are 4 feelings. And those feelings are angry, sad, afraid, and guilty. If you learn how to really express them and feel them, and you're absolutely right, it's not just saying it. It's not saying it with your thinking brain. It's staying present to it, really feeling that feeling until it fades in a certain way. What happens is you dismantle the circuit that's causing the suffering, and you
Mm.
spiral up where you can feel grateful,
Mhm.
where you can have that big heart of, I can actually feel the gratitude. I'm not forcing myself. It's just natural to me. You know, my natural state is in gratitude and joy, and now I'm feeling it biochemically. So I think we're entering in a time, we're in a hard place right now. We've got a tremendous amount of chronic diseases, mental health problems. We have huge amount of situational stress. We have a lot coming up right now that will get worse. People need to be stress protected. We want everyone to get in. Just take like even 3 months to learn how to rewire your brain and how to get from any stress level back to joy. Because what happens is it empowers you. And once you have that skill, you will have it for life.
Mhm.
Because there's always going to be the time when things go a little awry, and we do need to be prepared, not just for ourselves, but for our loved ones.
Mhm. I totally agree. Well, I think this is a good place to pause. I always like to do a quick speed round. Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with EBT or what we just talked about. Are you open to doing that?
Sure.
Okay, amazing. First question, if you could give yourself advice, yourself from 10 years ago advice, what would it be?
From 10 years ago, work less, trust more.
Mm. Oh, that's a good
You know
one.
when the good ideas come up? When you're in the shower, when you're playful, when you're relaxed, and the brilliant ideas come up. So I would work less and play more.
Mm. Um, I'm gonna say outside of EBT, what's your favorite thing to do for stress reduction?
I have a horse. I have
Okay.
a beautiful horse, and the horse is like one of my best friends, and it's something I did for myself. I've written actually 13 books now, and I said to my husband, I'm going to finish that last book, and what I want to do for myself is I want to go out and buy a really pretty horse. And so we did. So I go out to my horse, and you know what I do with my horse? I hug my horse.
Mm-hmm.
I just hug my horse. You know, they're such spiritual beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, animals are so healing. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, it would be, I have a special relationship with my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be for us to live a long time and have a lot of fun together. She's actually in the field of art and conservation of land. So she's taking care of the planet, I'm taking care of emotions, and we have so much in common that one thing that I really cherish is any time with her.
That's so sweet. What is the best thing you've purchased this year that cost you less than $200?
Best thing, I haven't purchased much. I'm not a purchaser, I have to
That's
say.
good.
I know. The best thing is some stuff for my hair that made my hair better. I mean, other than that, I'm fine.
Last one. If you could leave the listeners with one tip that they could implement this week that will help them live a healthier, happier life, what would that be?
When you wake up in the morning, appreciate it that on the day you were born, you had all the inherent strength, goodness, and wisdom you would ever need to solve any problem at all. Just set your sights on joy, connect with your body, listen to your body, move through your emotions. And what happens is the whole world opens up and you really don't have any problems anymore. You just have a big bunch of joy and a sense of having enough to give back. And it's by giving back that we make our lives complete.
Beautiful, Dr. Mellin. Please share any last things you want to share about where people can find you, EBT. I heard you talk a little bit about an app. So whatever you want to share with the listeners so they can maybe do this or learn more and connect with you.
Thank you. The Center for EBT is EBT, Emotional Brain Training, EBT.org. It's like food stamps except .org. That's the center of it all for health professional training, for getting into groups, for getting that. We don't give out the app without being in a group because our data from the University of California and University of Kentucky has shown that when people are in groups, they stay and they get great chances. If you're doing it alone, you're just not going to do it at the depth and intensity to make a difference. So go to EBT.org. If you're really into weight and overeating, my latest book is 1, 2, 3 Joy. It's got a lot of science in it, but it also shows you a lot about why it's the brain that's in charge of your eating and weight, and the brain can change. And when it changes, you have freedom. So 1, 2, 3 Joy on Amazon or on the internet, EBT.org.
Wonderful. We will put all of that stuff in the show notes. Thank you so much for everything that you shared today, Dr. Mellin.
My pleasure. Thank you.